Did time travel ruin the ending of Saitama vs. Garo? I think this is a pretty valid question, so in today's video, I'm going to go over the pros and the cons of introducing time travel into One Punch Man. Because honestly, you can make an argument for either side, and that's what I'll be doing today, so please make sure to stick to the end so you can make a firm decision yourself, or maybe I'll be able to change your mind. We'll see, but let's get right into the video. So as most of you probably already know, at the end of chapter 168, Garo essentially teaches Saitama how to turn back time in order to defeat him before he, kills all these people and causes all this massive destruction, and basically to save Terrio. This is basically Garo's full-on face turn, him choosing humanity and completely wrapping up his character arc. Now, there's been a lot of people in the community basically bagging on the whole time travel thing, saying that it was a total cop-out and causes a lot of problems for the series. So the first specific con I wanted to talk about here is the fact that Saitama goes back in time and stops Garo before any of the events in the past couple chapters happen, and many argue that it's basically made everything that's happened, all the major feats, all the major events in the last couple chapters completely meaningless, and since they technically didn't happen, then what's the point, right? And that's a pretty valid argument. I mean, it does kind of undermine everything that's happened up until that point, because we gotta remember, it doesn't seem like Saitama or Garo retained any of their memories from the previous chapters and that huge amazing fight that they had on Io and Jupiter and stuff like that. So it kind of sucks that they don't even know how incredible of a fight that was. Now, I could be wrong. In next chapter, we could get some insight into, maybe Saitama and Garo remember some of the fight. Maybe it just feels like one big dream, something like that. I sure hope so, because if no one remembers anything that happened, shouldn't have happened in the first place. That's kind of the argument here, which kind of brings me to my next point, because I was, kind of talking about it in the first con, and it's that Saitama and Garo don't have these memories from their prior fight. We're just gonna work under that assumption. That means that Garo's full character arc doesn't really come full circle, because he doesn't really completely come around until the very last moment, just before he dies. This is when he basically fully sees the error of his ways after knowing that he's responsible for Terrio's death, and he tries to make up for it by showing Saitama how to rewind time to make sure that he's stopped before any of this happens. And honestly, I thought this was a freaking amazing ending for Garo's character arc. I mean, he started off hating humanity, hating heroes, just wanting to become this absolute evil, and once he basically became this absolute evil, he realized that the bit of humanity that he was clinging on to was what he cherished the most, because he succeeded in killing a ton of people from his cosmic radiation, and once he came to terms with this fact, it kind of destroyed him. So it kind of made him realize that this isn't really what he wanted. He just basically wanted the world to be fair, and this was his way of doing it. And in discovering the error of his ways, Garo then had the opportunity to use his power to make things right again, and I thought this was just an amazing ending for him. And since technically none of this stuff happened, after Saitama goes back and nails him right in the face before any of that stuff happens, I'm really curious to see how he's still gonna have that face turn without having any of the experience to kind of push that, to push that idea in his head. So I don't know, maybe One and Murata find a way for him to, still have this kind of spiritual awakening, I guess, if you want to call it, because I really do think it's needed. And Garo's arc has been so long and so engaging that I think both Garo and all of us deserve a really satisfying ending to his story. But the final con here, I think, is a pretty big one, because the introduction of time travel to One Punch Man really raises a lot of questions and opens up some potential plot holes. Because, for example, if Garo is technically copying this power or imitating God's power or attempting to imitate God's power, then we can kind of assume that God is able to travel through time, right? And just thinking about it for a second, if what we're thinking is going to happen, Saitama is going to face off against God, and that's going to be kind of like the final fight, the final part of the series, then if God has experienced this, or he knows this is coming, then how hasn't he traveled back in time and basically stopped Saitama from being born or something, or basically done things in the past to assure his victory? pretty much, you know, because I think that would be kind of like the logical step for someone trying to take over the universe or take control of the whole world, right? So that's a really big question, and I hope that that kind of gets taken care of as these next chapters go along, because really that's going to be on a lot of people's minds. Like, this is a major plot hole that needs to be addressed. But you know, I have confidence in One Imrata to make it make sense, to make it fit within the story and not really ruin things. Because we do got to remember, guys, this is like a totally outlandish, convoluted manga. That's why a lot of us love it, because of all these crazy things that happen. So to kind of nitpick it in terms of, you know, this time travel stuff doesn't make sense, it's kind of an exercise in futility. And that's what brings me to my first pro of introducing time travel to the story. And it's that I'm not going to sit here and argue whether or not the explanation of time travel in this scenario made any sense, because I mean, time travel barely makes sense in our real life, right? So why does it need to make sense in the One Punch Man world? But what I did like is that it was kind of subtly set up throughout this fight. Like, for example, when Garo first got his cosmic powers, it was explained that he gained understanding and basically control over the movement of energy in the universe and the flow of energy in the universe, which basically allowed him to copy like any phenomena in space or naturally occurring thing in general. And you know, with him doing nuclear fission and gamma ray bursts, I guess the next logical step would be messing around with, you know, time travel, that kind of phenomena, right? Because I mean, if he's able to basically create black holes, then why is it so outlandish that he could eventually learn how to control time or travel through time? So it's not like it was just pulled out of nowhere. It's not like Saitama just learned how to time travel. Garo had to kind of help him, and I think it got taken care of in a really nice way. And that leads me to my next point. I think the use of this time travel and this whole scene with when they both used it, I think the way that it was used for Garo to kind of right his wrongs was a very nice way to end his character arc. And I kind of addressed this a little bit in the cons, but I want to stress how important it was to me for Garo to get a good ending by the end of this arc, because we've been following his story for so long, for like almost 100 chapters, and honestly I was pretty satisfied with the way things ended. I mean, I thought it was pretty beautiful, honestly. I mean, Garo literally sacrificed himself to save everybody, and the whole way the time travel was presented, you know, being this kind of like wormhole of all these events occurring at once, and Saitama just kind of picked one to jump into. I thought it was pretty cool. I thought it was handled pretty well, and it was just an insane way to undo all of the just as insane events that happened in the chapters prior. And really, that's what it's all about, right? Us getting some enjoyment out of it, us having fun exploring all of these crazy events and crazy phenomena of the story, and just kind of going along for the ride. It's not like the story's made solely for like intellectual exploration or kind of like psychological thriller stuff, you know? This is a battle manga, and sure, it has really great like character development, it has great storytelling, but being like a quote unquote like deep manga isn't its first priority, I don't think. And for, I think, the last and probably most important pro out of all this is that this was an easy way to bring everybody back, to bring Genos back, to bring all the people that died because of Garo's cosmic radiation. I mean, we all wanted that to happen, right? And instead of having this like drawn out, convoluted way that all of this stuff happens, like, you know, Genos is somehow backed up at Dr. Kuseno's lab so he can get a new brain and come back to life, and everybody else was cured of their, you know, radiation poisoning because of science, or, you know, something like that. Like, I think if people are going to complain about, you know, time travel being an easy fix to everything, I mean, look, if we wanted these characters to come back, there was going to have to be some kind of like nonsense to occur to make it happen. And I think the way that it was taken care of using time travel and also tying to like the whole narrative of the story and making a really big emotional impact, I think it was just a really great way to end this arc. And I don't know if you guys can't tell, I was personally a fan of the use of time travel in this instance. I'm not normally someone that likes time travel in manga and anime or in stories in general, but I think it was handled pretty well in this one. But, you know, what do you guys think? Do you think that time travel, you know, ruined the arc, ruined the story, or do you think it was a nice little addition and really enjoyed the ending of this arc? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I really do appreciate you guys sharing your opinions. I try to read as many as I can because I do really think you guys have some very insightful thoughts and ideas, and and it really gives me something to think about. So please make sure to comment, and if I'm not asking for too much, make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it, and please subscribe because I do drop a ton of One Punch Man content weekly, so you'll never be short of One Punch Man stuff here. But until next video, I'll see you guys later.